In Part 14 of Module 10 on budgeting and sustainability, we discuss 5 key areas of future state and local budget needs. Alternative energy sources and energy conservation. It is projected that peak oil will occur within the next 15 years, that is, if it has not already occurred. So-called fourth-generation nuclear energy is very likely to play a significant role in electricity generation, as is thermal energy generation. Fossil fuel-based energy sources will continue to be harnessed in the form of coal and natural gas. Renewable energy in the form of solar electric, solar thermal, wind generation, ocean thermal energy conversion, tidal generation, and geothermal will be used to provide a sizable portion of state and local energy needs in future years where state and local governments have access to those sources. Climate change impacts. As we near a time when greenhouse gas emissions restrictions and carbon sequestration will become common terminology, the development of locally suited alternative forms of renewable energy will be a priority concern for state and local governments. Sustainable communities will require significant participation from state and local government in the form of financial commitments to public-private partnerships and tax incentives. Significant climate change impacts are projected to occur within the next few decades. Depending upon the location of a community, climate change may lead to rising ocean levels and flooding, severe heat and drought, increased extreme weather behavior, and more frequent range and forest fires, to name but a few possible adverse climate-related phenomena. The development of alternative energy is beneficial in terms of reducing carbon emissions into the atmosphere. Infrastructure renewal is a multifaceted phenomenon. Tremendous resource commitments are required just to maintain the current infrastructure. In the long run, commitment to maintaining infrastructure is less costly than neglect and subsequent failure. Bioequity calls for the equal treatment for both human society and other elements of the biosphere, and acting on a commitment to building communities that do not develop at the expense of the environment in which they exist. Understanding and mandating bioequity through regulation may have begun with the National Environment Policy Act, or the NEPA, in 1969, and the passage of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act, but has been interpreted and has evolved on the local level to encompass more. The National Environmental Policy Act was one of the first environmental laws ever written in 1969. NEPA requires federal agencies to consider the environmental impacts of proposed federal projects which could significantly affect the environment. The Endangered Species Act was enacted in 1973 and provides for the conservation of ecosystems upon which threatened and endangered species of fish, wildlife, and plants depend. The Clean Air Act is the law defining EPA's, or the Environmental Protection Agency's, responsibility for protecting and improving the nation's air quality and the stratospheric ozone layer. This legislation authorized the development of comprehensive federal and state regulations to limit emissions from both stationary, industrial sources, and mobile sources. The adoption of this very important legislation occurred at approximately the same time as the National Environmental Policy Act that established the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The Clean Water Act, based on the Federal Water Pollution Control Act from 1972, the Clean Water Act, named in 1977, establishes the basic structure for regulating discharges of pollutants into the waters of the United States and regulating quality standards for surface waters. The Clean Water Act made it unlawful to discharge any pollutant from a point source into navigable waters unless a permit was obtained. Technology and innovation. Sustainable communities will manifest lower demands for transportation corridors and transport infrastructure if technological development and communication innovation continue. Public-private partnership commitments to the promotion of new environmental technologies will make resource use more efficient, creating well-paying jobs while simultaneously reducing the relative cost of living. For example, it is possible that many of the industrial manufacturing jobs of the future could be completed from home computers managing robotic systems on a distant factory floor. In fact, much of the technology needed to expand these systems is already available. A budgetary commitment on the part of government might speed the process towards the more widespread use of these technologies. What the long-term future holds in the way of related communication technology innovations will likely only bring us closer to sustainable communities. In Part 15 of Module 10 on budgeting and sustainability, we'll discuss budgeting and the core dimensions of sustainability and the conclusion.